Throughout history, every culture and age has told stories of hauntings, visitations from beyond the grave. Whatever your beliefs, what cannot be denied is that the living are outnumbered by the dead. The tales you're about to witness are created from first-hand accounts. They portray the experiences of people who had no more reason to believe in ghosts than you. Is it possible that beyond our understanding there exists a darker world? The early hours of a summer night, 1999. Deep in the Sussex countryside stands Mitchelham Priory. Once the dwelling place of an order of monks, on a site that is over 700 years old.
Please, stop! Why don't you leave me alone?
What dark events led this man to feeling under siege in his own home? Only 2 weeks earlier, Chris Tuckett had first taken residence at Mitchelham Priory in his new role as property manager.
For me, it was a big break. I've been on building sites for some years before I came here. It was an opportunity for me to get a career, a sustainable career, and I was really excited at the prospect of working in such a place as this. You're pretty much in awe of your surroundings. You literally walk through the gatehouse and you see it, and the majestic side of it is just fantastic. The views, the gardens. It just looked like an idealistic place to be, really.
Yet, as early as his first night in the building, Chris began to think that perhaps all was not as it seemed. As the only resident in the Priory, he had to set a complex system of security alarms as he locked up for the night.
Initially, I thought I'd locked someone in. If a door opens, I know. If anyone comes in the house, once that alarm's been set, then I know anyone coming in.
Each time Chris thought he had found the source of the woman crying, he felt the sound came from elsewhere. But after checking every room and alarm, he realized that the house was empty. Although unsettled by the harrowing episode, for Chris, it was merely the beginning of his experiences at the Priory.
quickly as it came, it went. And it's not like it just stopped. It physically, you could hear it coming. It came into the room and it was gone again.
Chris was not the only person to believe that there were strange happenings at Mitchelham. His predecessor also felt he had been targeted by unseen forces.
Outside, it was a beautiful evening. Then all of a sudden we had this terrific roar, you know, like a train or a plane. And it just got louder and louder, and I went to the window to look out, you know, what is it? And next minute, it swooped, came up through the house, through the flat. Wow. Something had gone through the house, and it was gone. The house has always been in command. We've got hundreds of years of history, of day-to-day living in this place, like we've got today. Nobody can tell me that there's not a presence at Mitchelham Priory, because there is.
Fred came to believe that whatever resides in the Priory could strike out at anyone trying to settle there.
It's their way of saying, we're here. And if things happen in their house, they react by, they don't like it.
When I first moved in, the flat was unfurnished.
Chris decided to turn an empty room at the top of the house into his living quarters. It was then that he felt that a presence was finally trying to drive him out.
To be perfectly honest with you, I was terrified. Once you've established that you are actually awake and this is really happening, very, very quickly your mind is overwhelmed by fear. The bureau looked like it just moved 2 or 3 feet away from the wall where it was placed. I still can't believe I found myself in that situation. It was pure hell.
Please, stop! Why don't you leave me alone?
It was the last call for me. I was desperate. it did wear me down. The only way I could deal with it, and the way I did deal with it in the end, was to sit at the bottom of the stairs of the main house, and I found myself talking to a property, trying to make whoever it is here not feel threatened. But I wasn't going to change anything dramatically or drastically, and actually I was here to try and maintain and look after the place rather than being a threat. If that particular evening hadn't taken place, I'm sure I wouldn't be here now.
Since that night, Chris has come to terms with life at the Priory, but he remains forever on his guard.
It's a situation where I don't really want to know the ins and outs of whys and the wherefores. I'm here for a blink in time, and I'm just irrelevant in the scale of things, really, and I am here just for a blink. After all, it's their house, and I'm just a guest.
Is it perhaps possible that buildings are not mere bricks and mortar, that they can somehow carry the dark traces of an unseen world? The Isle of Wight, 3 miles from mainland Britain, atop a hill in the northern coastal town of Ryde, sits a Victorian building. For decades, residents say they've been terrorized there.
Nothing would induce me to go back and live there now. To actually spend the night in the place, I don't really know what we were thinking about, to be honest. I mean, it just frightens the life out of me to think about it. My stomach churns at the thought of what went on there. The building, to me, is alive. It's got evil. And I think there's something buried in there.
John and Margaret Oakley moved in to the top floor flat of the converted Victorian house, and at first, nothing suggested the events that would unfold.
It was a gradual thing, to be quite honest. It wasn't really until some major situations occurred that I came to realise there was something not quite right. There's something outside yourself that seemed to be there. Something in the darkness that you can't see and you don't know what it is. We were asleep in the bedroom. About 2 o'clock in the morning, was an attack, trying to envelop you. It was oppressive. I was paralysed with fear. I was frightened to put my hand into the bed to put the light on, for wondering what I was going to see. It stopped immediately. You flooded the room with light. And it's even greater shock, really, to see that there wasn't anything there. Which was even worse. You know, because you can't defend yourself against nothing. After that, I searched that flat. I looked up the chimney, I looked behind everything, and I even went up in the roof, and I couldn't see a thing. I don't want to go down that road where those wings came from. That was from a very dark place indeed. I knew after that the force in that building was evil. The whole atmosphere of the place was so bad I didn't want to stay.
Days later, the Oakleys fled the flat. Sometime afterwards, Dean and Georgina Rogers became tenants.
I don't know what they were. I don't pretend to know what ghosts are, but they were present in that building.
And Georgina believes one, a female presence, began to focus on a particular member of the Rogers family.
Everything I did with my son in the flat was being watched by her. It felt like she was present behind me every time I bathed him, every time I dressed him, every time I changed his nappy, every time I fed him. When she entered the room, as soon as she entered the room, whether she opened the door to enter or whether she came through the wall, you would know straight away that she was there. Her presence was better felt than the presence of a living person in the room. When Connor would wake in the night and cry, me and Dean would wait, because sometimes she would go to him and shush him back to sleep, and we would actually hear her over the cot. Shh, shh. Me and Connor were in the flat one day on our own. And he was playing up. And I lost my temper with him and shouted.
Something that she regrets.
At that point, I felt threatened and scared that she would have the power to do that.
Nevertheless, Georgina felt something far worse lay elsewhere in the house.
It seemed that the further you went down in the building, the more evil it felt.
Ed Payne and his wife were the occupants of the ground floor flat.
We felt that we were being looked at, not just on the outside, but inside. And it was a terrible, terrible feeling that someone was scrutinising you all the time, and you couldn't see it. And it was a real deep oppressiveness. When I put my head on the pillow to go to sleep, I heard a banging noise. And it was though it was coming from an inside wall, someone trying to get out. A couple of nights later, put our head down to go to sleep, and all of a sudden, I heard a baby crying. And it was in our bedroom. And I got up from the bed and I walked to the wardrobe where I thought the noise was coming from. When I neared the wardrobe, the baby stopped crying. I had to open the wardrobe because I just had to find out. When I put my hand on the linen on the left-hand side, the linen was quite warm, as though a baby was lying on it. When I put my hand on the right-hand side, it was normally cold. I knew where the sounds were coming from. They were distinctive. Whatever was in there was, it's playing games with you.
But if something was playing games with him, the games were about to become more terrifying.
I went up to the hallway. I saw a black mass. It was though you were being attacked, and I tell you, I was scared. I was frightened out of my wits. It looked evil. Obviously, I couldn't tell my wife. I didn't want to alarm her. was a few days after that that my wife said to me, Ed, I've got something to tell you. She said, Ed, she said, I'm scared. I saw a black mass, just a few inches from the ground. It just looked evil. I can't go on. I just can't say no more about it because I'm getting upset.
Ed's wife died 4 years later. To this day, he feels her death could be linked to their stay in the house. Stretching over 20,000 miles, through cityscapes and countryside to some of the most deserted and dark corners of the country, are Britain's railways. Yet, stories told of this remote, forest-shrouded train crossing at Naworth, Cumbria, suggest it may not be just the living travelling along them.
When you're talking to the locals, you discover this fear of going to Naworth at night, and level-minded people saying they would never pass that area at night because of the creepy atmosphere.
I'm not a soft guy. I've been on the railway coming up for 30 years. I've also done tours in Northern Ireland when I was in the army, and I wasn't scared. But working it now within that wood, I was terrified.
For signalman Dennis Simpson, what began as a normal night shift was to change his life forever.
We used to go to Naworth when the engineers were working on the line.
Stationed in this signal box in the dead of night, Dennis would have to walk up the track and lower the barriers to let trains pass the crossing.
It's like a place in the middle of nowhere. Trees hanging over, wind blowing, and it is very, very, very weary place to go to. There's no lights on, nothing. The telephone rang. I answered it, and the signalman at Lower Ross said, there's a train coming. It's just left me now. Silence and darkness, that's all it was. And all of a sudden, just halfway up the track to the crossing, my whole body like tingled, went cold, and I was actually shaking. The sound was children crying for their mother or father. I was scared, and it was a horrible, horrible sound. That's when I ran to the crossing to lower the barriers. Terrified. Terrified. I actually ran back to the signal box and locked the door. And I had to sit there in that box, and I was hoping there'd be no more trains to save us going back out.
Dennis refused to work the crossing again. But he would not be alone in believing that the woods held a dark secret. One night, signalman Colin Metcalf headed to Naworth.
I'd heard of rumours of Naworth being spooky and eerie, and I took it just to be as nonsense until the night I actually drove down.
Rather than wait in the signal box surrounded by forest, Colin parked his car at the crossing, waiting for the trains to come.
I noticed there was these lights kept appearing over on the wood on the far side of the railway, and they were appearing and disappearing in a U-turn. And I was trying to fathom out actually what the lights were for. I was wondering why it all of a sudden started barking. I was sitting with fear then. But then the figure spoke. "Could I have a light, please?" I looked for my lighter in the car. There was no figure there at all. It had disappeared. I was absolutely petrified. Had no time to walk away from the car, walk to the woods, or walk in front of the car. No way. I know what I seen. There was a figure there, and then there wasn't a figure there.
After alerting headquarters, Colin raced from Narworth. Still troubled by his experience and looking for answers, Dennis Simpson turned to local historian Robert French.
It was August the 30th, 1926. It was at 1:18 in the afternoon. The weather was clear. Everything was perfect. There was a charabanc, which was the early form of transport, early form of buses, was going on a pleasure trip, and it had to pass by Naworth Level Crossing. A new signalman had taken the job 7 days earlier, a Mr. Oliver.
Yet, as the signalman opened the gate for the charabanc to cross the tracks, the trip turned to horror as a train sped towards it.
The train was doing about 50 miles an hour when the collision occurred. The incident was of obviously a horrendous nature when 8 local people died.
Of the 8 killed, 4 members of the same family were among the dead. A Mrs. Campbell, her sister-in-law, and her 2 children. And one final chilling detail would offer no peace to Colin Metcalfe and Dennis Simpson.
This is the wood where they laid the bodies, just down there. And it still haunts me till this day.
I wouldn't like to go back again anyways. And I didn't go back from that night anyways. I totally refused to go back.
I know there were 2 children crying and they were ghosts.
Flintshire, northeast Wales. A land filled with dark and mysterious tales of spirits and hauntings finds perhaps its most chilling in the foreboding confines of a 17th century Jacobean mansion. Plas Teg.
Plas Teg was originally built in 1610 by Sir John Trevor, and Plas Teg means fair house, fair mansion. But I think you could look at the house's history over the centuries, and it's got anything but a fair history. It's dark, it's gruesome, it's full of bloodthirsty deeds and sorrowful events. You have to remember that when Plas Teg was built, we're living in the age of witchcraft, when there was a great battle going on between the forces of Christian religion and the much darker, older pagan beliefs. It's noticeable in this house that Sir John Trevor, as far as we know, had a witch sign carved on the fireplace in the Great Hall. and this was designed to prevent evil spirits from coming in down the chimney. Now, looking at the history of the house, clearly it was one of those symbols that really didn't work.
Yet, for one man, unaware of the house's history, the offer of lodging in Plas Teg with the mansion owner, while he did some work there, was one he found too tempting to resist.
Our family business at the time was accountancy, and we handled the books for Plas Teg. Within a couple of days of moving in, I just woke up in the middle of the night. The sound was as if 20 or 30 people were stamping, thundering up and down on the floor above. It's just shock and great confusion. I mean, I knew there was just the two of us there in the house.
But within a matter of days, Mark would become convinced that it was not just he and the owner that walked the mansion. But now, it was not just Mark Ridgway who felt he was experiencing strange events. They were also reported on the road outside the mansion.
I worked the area around Plas Teg Hall for about 15 years, and on a regular basis I used to get telephone calls and callers at the police station saying there was a woman walking along the dual carriageway near Plas Teg. I found it strange that every time I went there I couldn't find anything. I recall one instance where a young lady reported having struck a pedestrian on the road outside Plas Teg Hall, which resulted in the force sending out a helicopter and a search dog to look for a casualty.
The driver claimed that after she hit the woman pedestrian, she could see no sign of the victim. The police, with a helicopter team surveying the road and nearby fields, could also find no trace. Mark Ridgway was facing his last night in Plas Teg.
It felt as if somebody's face was right in my face. It was there.
Mark left the mansion, never to return. But there were still reports of strange happenings on the road outside Plas Teg. A number of cars had crashed coming off the dual carriageway, with no other vehicles involved.
It's about 10:30. I was on my way to Wrexham to meet a friend, and as I was driving, hit the brakes and skidded the car. It was like a thud, and I just sat there, absolutely petrified. Half of me wanted to get out and look, but the other half of me, I just remember having my hands on the steering wheel and my knuckles were white. It's just an awful feeling to think that you've killed somebody. The police officer knocked on my window. He asked me, was I all right? And I said no, I wasn't. You know, I said, I think I've hit somebody, a girl, and could he go and look for me? The police officer came back and he said, there's no one there. I just thought, well, there's got to be. Well, there's got to be somebody there. I didn't think they believed me, actually, that I'd actually seen somebody until I described what the lady looked like. And he said, well, haven't you heard? What? About the ghost.
Could Plas Teg's dark history hold the key to the sightings on the nearby road?
Sir John Trevor had a daughter, Dorothy, and as was common then, rich families would try to marry into rich families. They had somebody lined up, a sort of nobleman with a good estate in Cheshire.
Yet Dorothy did not agree with her father's plans for marriage and plotted to run away with her true love, a local farmer's son.
Now, a week before they eloped, Dorothy took some family jewels and hid them in the well nearby to the house.
Dorothy and her lover arranged to make their escape under the cover of night. But first, she walked alone to retrieve the hidden jewellery that would fund their future happiness.
She made her way to the well in the dark, and because she obviously couldn't show a light in case someone saw where she was going, she couldn't find the hiding place. And in her panic to find them, slipped and fell down the well.
As Dorothy lay in darkness, her distraught lover thought that he had been jilted.
The farmer's son hung himself from the tree where they'd arranged to meet, and barely 2 days later, Dorothy's body was finally recovered from the well, where she'd died.
Does local folklore offer too convenient an explanation? That the figure seen by drivers is the ghost of the tragic daughter? Perhaps. But consider this, the route that would have reunited the lovers cuts across the road. Mid-19th century Britain, Swindon Railway Works, where thousands of men would risk their lives in brutal and dangerous conditions, toiling to build transport for a new age.
It's hammer shops, such things as that, you know. Rolling mills, all the red hot steel coming round.
There was shunting going on, and people got crushed with the shunting, or injured, maimed.
Oh, it's a dangerous place to work in.
So many people got killed on this railway workshops.
When the works closed in 1986, security men were stationed to patrol the vast semi-derelict site.
I used to go around to do the rounds, and all you had was a hand torch. You're walking around, and the building is breathing, and you hear the creak, the cracks going on, and it's spooky.
ghostly, very haunted place.
There was one place I used to hate going in, and that was Nine's shop. I always thought there was something there.
And the guards soon began to feel that they were not alone.
For backup. He just seemed to disappear right in front of their eyes. Nothing there at all. They more or less broke down in fear.
After the apparent disappearance of the figure, many guards were too fearful to work the site.
We had blokes come on the job and we took them round and showed them what to do, but as soon as they had to go on their own, that was it. They come off the job. They just said, well, we don't want that, it's too frightening. One bloke I always remember, he went out for an hour and he come back, he said, that's it. He went home and finished. He just couldn't stand it. He was frightened.
But one night watchman who remained believes he came face to face with the figure they say haunts the works.
I couldn't tell you that this night was any particular, in any way different to any other night. Until, until it kind of all happened. Well, I was coming towards the end of that patrol.
And as he was coming down the stairwell,
I caught a movement out the corner of my eye.
he saw a figure.
This figure was looking into the inside of this clock.
And he challenged him.
And as he did so,
It wasn't even as though he vanished, he just suddenly wasn't there anymore.
Is it possible the figure could have been a ghostly echo of the railway works past? It is certain that the clock was one that Great Western Railway trains set their timetable to. And over the years, it would have been the duty of various workers to make sure the clocks were in working order.
The way Steve described him, it was a man that used to look out at these two big master timepieces we had in the works. There's no other explanation. Nobody could have got in there because the doors were locked both sides.